Hey guys, these are Folsom points. These are all casts. If they were real, I would be a rich man. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've got here. So the point of this video is to just show some of the Folsom casts that I have, mainly for people who don't have these casts to see them up close and a little bit more personal. So that they may learn or just appreciate the incredible craftsmanship that goes into or that went into making these points 10,000 to 11,000 years ago on the high plains. Yeah, we'll just kind of walk through. There's some preforms in here. There's some broken ones. And there are also some really, really incredibly made finished pieces. I think what I'll first start off with is some of these smaller ones. Let's just start off. So I bought these secondhand, as a group. So the problem is I don't know the provenance of a lot of these or where they're from. So I'll try to guess, but again, that's not going to be accurate information a lot of the time. But based on what I'm seeing on this one, it looks to be Burlington shirt. And very thin between the flutes, and probably, Illinois or Wisconsin or somewhere around there. It's a nice little Folsom there. And it actually has that double conical area here in the middle up to the tip. And this one doesn't look like it was actually, it doesn't look like it was much longer than it is right now, because it tapers quite a bit. So it was probably fluted somewhat close to this length here. Flute kind of ran off to the side a little bit. I'm gonna make sure that this camera is focusing because I've got a shop light here. I want to make sure that these are focusing on this. I'll move this down a little bit. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit as well, just to get a good focus on these. This one's probably from around Colorado. It's made out of moss agate. This one probably wasn't much longer either when it was fluted. This is second face flute here. First face was nice long flute, but it terminated right before the tip there. Right there. That's one of the things that's very common about these Folsoms is the, ability to stop the flutes where they wanted them to stop. So there's a massive amount of knowledge and expertise that went into making these, and really, really just being a master of the conchoidal fracture, and really they had a adept understanding of fracture mechanics and how to support rock and work with raw stone. This is a, if I had to guess, a Knife River flint. It looks like, oh yep, North Dakota on there. This one's interesting. It's fluted twice, and this was probably a much longer Folsom at some point, and then it was rechipped to this final form here. And you can see also this flute channel here, really flat. We're not close to the initiation of that first flute, so that's how we can tell that this was resharpened quite a bit. And there's not really much microflaking on this one, or just shaping. This one has more of what we would call microflaking or fine edge work. And this one's actually really thin. Very thin between the flutes. One of the things that's unique about these Folsoms, the more originals that I see, one thing that you'll notice, and not all of them, of course, there are always exceptions, but one thing that's a pattern is there will be a very straight line of force in the flute channel. We see it on this one right here, and it was probably on this one as well. but this is the first face flute, so we don't see it as much. There's typically a deep undulation or a straight line. It's a really nice one. We're talking about this one's from Blackwater Draw. It's a nice little Folsom there. Here's what's nice about this one, and this is something that a lot of modern nappers don't get right when they make Folsoms, is a lot of them have a taper or a narrowing towards the base and a widening up towards the tip. That's what we see on this one. Here's the first face flute. Look at the channel flake stopping right there. And a lot of the time they'll take a little flake, if that hinges harshly, they'll take a flake to remove the back side of the hinge. This one's got some very nice edge work. It's the second face flute, I believe. It helps to also look at the flute channel and see what it looks like down the middle. There's the other pressure flake coming in to remove that hinge there. This Folsom, I'm a little skeptical of. I know that there are modern points that sometimes make it into casters' hands, and I don't know any information on this because I got it secondhand. And it has some characteristics of modern Folsom points. And the main thing being that the flute just runs right off the tip there. Not much microflaking, although that's not a end-all be-all for modern versus old. Old ones sometimes don't have modern or flaking like that. But it's a little wider than the average, and it's just looks like it could have been made with a jig. But it could be old, so I don't want to discount this one. Very thin between the flutes. And even still, there are one or two flint knappers, as far as I'm concerned, modern today that can do this, so still impressive. Can still shed light on how these are made. This is, get my tripod here. This one's amazing, and this is a Knife River Flint preform. This was the first face flute. Really nice one. And it's cool to see the pressure flaking that goes into, that's why I like seeing these preforms, is just seeing the pressure flaking that goes into creating the dome when these are fluted to create a channel to run. And this one tragically dove down under. It also looks like there was double contact with the tool that they used. And this also sheds some light into the way that these were made. So this tool, maybe not double contact, but it just wasn't great contact with the platform. We know for sure that these must have been supported somehow really in a nice way, because to add enough mass to get these flutes to go. But look at the flaking on this. One of the things that I try to think of is that if they're stopping the flutes, then they must have some sort of way of really controlling the contours. So you want to look for that taper, and it does slowly taper downhill on this one. If that flute were successful, it could have terminated right around in here. It would have had pretty good matching flutes, and then re-chip the tip and everything to fit that, and then bring in the edges, and then maybe do micro flaking and make a really nice Folsom point. But yeah, this one failed during fluting. And what's interesting is that we have this, and I, for whatever reason, see this more commonly in some of the Folsoms from North Dakota. It could be that on the northern end of the areas where they were making them, that they were using an anvil or something to blunt them or support the tip on, because I've seen so many found by other people or artifact hunters that live in North Dakota, and almost all of them are Folsom preforms that have a blunted square tip, and this is no exception to that. This one is just like that, but others don't. And that brings me to this one. This one looks like it's probably agate or some sort of jasper agate kind of material that probably is, this one, if I had to guess, this one's probably from Colorado or New Mexico, just based on the material. And so the first flute was successful on this one. And you can see that there. Nice contour on this one. Nice dome. Second flute dove. Reverse hinge, plunging flute. Broke it in half. And when I look at this, I think, you know, what's interesting about this one versus the other is the width difference. I would think that you would want a lot of space for a flute to travel. The narrower it is and the more force that you have going into that flute, the larger the chance, or the greater the chance of it reaching the outer edge and popping under like this. So what's interesting is this one was fluted at a very narrow width. And what's also interesting is that the spall or rock that this came from, probably a spall or flake, the surface is still there. So if you were to try to support this with the tip, it would be pretty hard with this angle that they have on there. It would be rocking around a lot. So I'm sure there are different ways that they were fluted, or at least supported when they were done. Give you a look at the contour on this one. Pretty consistent all the way up to the tip. Not much of a taper. Yeah, bummer on that one. Also look at where the platform was. This is really important. Not super isolated. I mean, get your punch in there or your pressure flake, your pressure tool, but I think they were done with punches. And you seat it right in there and you smack it. It's not direct percussion. Absolutely not. Although Bob Patton had a lot of success in really furthering our modern knowledge of how these ancient nappers were achieving these feats of fracture mechanics. To get flutes in between some of these points, there's just no way you would be able to do that without breaking off the ear, and even still you would screw up the whole point. So they had to be placing some sort of tool in there and delivering force indirectly. This one is unique because it was fluted off the side, and it was fluted at a point where it at least appears similar to the other that I just showed, the other preform, that it was fluted almost with the finished shape already, and I think either that flute just ran off the side, you can see here, or it could be that they had just two flutes that matched up nicely and then they matched it. But here again we can see that hard force straight line. I should make a name for that. And look at the flute stopping right here. Not much microflaking on this one. Flute stopping right here, and this pressure flake coming in to remove the rest of that hinge there. Nice taper in between the base there. This one's amazing. This one's made from petrified wood from Colorado somewhere, or may not even be from Colorado, could be from anywhere really. Lots of small localized sources of materials like this, but this is made from an agatized petrified wood. And it's the first face flute, I believe. Really nice long flute there. Very thin between the flutes on this one. And then second side flute. This one, wasn't gonna run much longer than it did, but look how thin it was even when they were fluting it, you know? These have to be thin when you flute them. Contour. And what's interesting about this one is probably strategic. They were fluting it parallel to the grain of the wood. And there's some microflaking down in the base, but not much. It's a really cool point. Give you a good look at that. A bit of hinging there on the side. While I'm at it, let me talk about this one from the shifting sand site. First of all, this is a channel flake that is unrelated to this one. Obviously, they're from the same site, but this channel flake did not come off of this Folsom. If we look here, it broke into 3 pieces. Give you a look at the undulations and the force there. Pretty flat. Pretty flat. Bulb. Oh man, I gotta like zoom in or something. These new iPhones have too many options that it actually makes it harder to focus, which is really annoying. Angle of the platform as well, you can see on there. This is the stuff that is really important when it comes to replication and understanding. Just looking at little details like that. The pressure flaking. Nice dome on there. Notice also there's some force coming off this here as these 2 flakes break and touch each other. And occasionally on the back side on these Folsoms, you'll see that the support caused a reverse fracture to break off. Not much on this one. That's just probably not much of it. Not a great example right there. But I think I have another one that shows that. When I went to Zellman's Napping, I accidentally I lost a couple of pieces of this Folsom because it was pretty windy. But this is the channel flake off of one of these faces here. I think it's this one right here. And shifting sand site, Edwards Plateau Chert. Take a look at that. What's unique about this Folsom is that it appears that it was a successful flute on both sides. And here we see this is I think this is actually, this may be the, I haven't put this one together in a while. Forgive me for the confusion, but I think this might be the other flake there, the first side flute. Take a look at this. And this is actually really similar to some of the ones that I've seen on the High Plains, Best of High Plains Artifacts forum on Facebook. A lot of the flute, just like that, with this really, that hard force line we're talking about. There's the platform there. Nice little guide flutes, guide flakes, I guess. There's the rest of the surface here. Show you some of the flaking on there. Undulations. And then this one here is the initiation of this platform on this backside. Unique, what's interesting about this one is that this flute had quite a bit of These people are just so skilled, because you can see this channel and the platform that it was supposed to run, and the thickness it was supposed to run, was still really low in here and then higher on the sides. And they still overcame that concavity there. This platform blew up a little bit, so we don't have as consistent as a platform remnant as this one. Hard force on both sides, you can see. And look at that. And then this one broke in two ways, in two spots, which is kind of uncommon for, see that there? If it was just a retouch pressure break, then that would make sense. This is probably still broken that way, but what I suspect is that when they're doing the microflaking on the edges, they don't want that. They don't want these flakes to end up in the channel, so they have to support it with something that's very hard and sturdy. So if you've got rigid support, maybe it's a bone, maybe it's a hard piece of wood or a hard piece of antler or horn. If you're doing that and you're putting a lot of pressure on something like this, it may have caused it to break in this manner with these, and broke into 3 pieces. Or, I mean, it's possible it could have been killed, but it doesn't seem like something that was finished to be killed, but you never know. It's hard to say, and that's why we speculate when we look at things like this. It's a really unique one. I don't think I talked about this one, but this one's cool because it has microflaking on it. It's really hard to pick it up. But we can see in the margin between the flute channel and the edge, there is remnant of pressure flaking. And then on the very edge, there is fine retouch Folsom microflaking, which these casts don't always pick it up that well. Nice flute on that one. And this one definitely has been resharpened quite a bit. See here. This one's a Knife River Folsom. Interesting ears on this one. I think it was double fluted on this face, and that could explain why the ears are a little bit longer and more inset, because if they had to reset the platform and do it again, then you would have to remove more mass in the channel and make a deeper base. This is the first side flute, this is the second side. Actually, I'm not so sure about that. It's hard to say. It's a little bit harder because this one has been patinated to make it look like it's been sitting in the ground, because sometimes Knife River flint gets like that. It's harder to tell the flaking detail on this back side. Yeah, it's a really nice one. And this one is interesting because when I look at this, you see the flute rise up right here and then continue on. That can tell us a lot about support on the surface and support overall, but this is indicative of something that was on the surface that flake came in contact with. Deep undulations. That's a cool one. Here's another one with a square or chisel tip. Here's the first side flute. Second side flute was a skimmer. Didn't catch much of the platform. They probably discarded it as such for that reason. You can see that pressure flaking to create that ridge, but this one the contours are pretty messed up. This one wouldn't have traveled probably all that well, or would have reversed hinged just based on these contours if they did catch enough of that platform. Let's look at the area where the platform was. See how they didn't catch a whole lot of the platform? There's a little bit more, they left a little bit of meat on the bone. Caught too little of it, and it just didn't fly right. See that there? Interesting material. Again, chisel tip, but here's what's interesting about this one is that if this chisel tip were supported in something, it's actually angled quite a bit down this way, so it would also rock. And if it was something flat, it would have the tendency to move around, so hard to say. Look at the way that flake terminated though. It's really cool. On a typical Folsom, they'd probably want to take a pressure flake and remove most of that. This one is amazing. This one is just amazing. Could be from Wyoming or somewhere like that, Colorado. Looks like it's probably made from, just based on the cast, it's probably made from silicified sandstone or ortho-quartzite. And this one was definitely thrown. Look at the impact there. Impact fracture. Broke in the haft. Very thin between the flutes. Nice taper as it comes down towards the base and expands up towards the tip. That's a really nice point. And they chucked it. Chucked it out of bison. Probably. This one's cool. Probably, this is probably Burlington shirt. It was really thin. This one's made on a spall. See the surface, the original surface there? All through here. And they must not have had high hopes for this flute here, because the contours, because it's made on a flake, would have stopped that flute anyway, so they probably were expecting it to stop where it did. But very thin between the flutes. A nice flute on this side. And one of the things that you'll notice on these Folsoms is that the width in the bases are all pretty common. Oh, I gotta continue filming here. Got a little notification saying that I was low battery. I gotta speed up. The width in the bases are all pretty similar. Not always, but there is a consistency between the width and the bases. It's not like Clovis where there's a lot of variety and variation. This is probably one of the, it is one of the finest made Folsoms out there. And if this is a real artifact, I actually don't know the story on this one, but I believe that it is real. And it looks to be made from, based on the cast, flat top chalcedony. Micro flaking, incredible channel flaking, channel flutes. These casts, I believe, turn out just a little bit thinner than the originals, but still, as we do lose a little bit of definition with these. Oh, it's just amazing. Like Tony Soares has said that, you know, most Folsoms are not fluted with an arcing flute. They don't rock at all side to side or base to tip. So that tells me that these platforms are very steep and they're straight in. And this one's almost too good to be true, but I believe it's real because flat top chalcedony is not napped hardly ever by modern nappers. It's not accessible. This is the Lindenmeyer Folsom. Super, super thin between the flutes on that one. And so, like, this is something that when I look at this, I think, okay, that's possible that you could flute that with direct percussion based on the way that the bass looks. But why would you do that? Why would you risk knocking off the ear and losing length and then retrimming and then recreating a new platform? Just doesn't make much sense. If you're going to go through all that work to acquire the material and conserve it and nap it, why would you flute it in a way that doesn't make sense if you're trying to get nice flutes? But yeah, this is the Lindenmeyer Folsom, and it's super, super thin. Really, really nice. I don't know if I already showed this one, but this is Knife River Flint. Similar to the ears on the previous one we were looking at. Where did that one go? This one flares a little more, this one's straight down. This one's been resharpened quite a bit. This one is really cool looking. Interesting flute on this one. Dove down, came back out. There's that force I was talking about, straight line force. Really interesting flutes on this one. Nice flaking on the edge there. Not super fine, but nice pressure flaking for sure. Kind of looks like Edwards Chert, so it could be from Oklahoma or maybe Northwest Texas, Northern Texas, who knows, hard to say. This one is made from petrified wood, might be from Colorado. But yeah, they weren't going to get much in the way of fluting this one on this face. Look at the contours on that one. Needless to say, this person had high hopes when they were making that fluting platform for that face. This is the only one that I have of Hartville Uplift Chert in here, I think. I mean, some of the others may be from varieties or from the same formation, but this is no doubt Trout Creek Jasper or something of the like from that area, and this is Colorado. And this one, I have no doubt, was probably found in the South Platte River, because it's been river tumbled. It's made from material that is commonly found in that area, or at least artifacts that are. This one's a little thicker, but it also, being stream tumbled, we've lost a lot of that definition. Still a very nice Folsom. It's a really nice one. I do want to talk about this one too, because this is a, well, you know, I don't really know. I guess it would be a Goshen or a Midland, but I think Midlands are only, I think one of the key criteria of Midlands is that they're percussion flaked. This one's pressure flaked. But here's what's interesting. One of the things that we see on Folsom points, and I'll grab a couple to show that, is that, oh, I forgot to show this one. This one is a quartzite point, and it looks like, I think this is Hickston and was probably found in Wisconsin. This is a beautiful point. Wish I could tell you guys more about the sites that these were found at, or by who or where. It's a nice one. But one of the things that we'll see on Folsoms, and sometimes Midlands and Goshens, is that they have this little tail. See that? And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's because these are unfluted Folsoms. But that could not be further from the truth. If we see the preforms, how Folsoms were made, that's not true. And also, that is not a platform at all. I mean, if you were to strike that, it's not turned to either side, so that wouldn't flute. Instead, it's tapered, just down in the base. So what is it? Well, hard to say, but I think it could serve as a way of reducing shock or impact on the point. So if this is in a foreshaft, let's say something hard like bone, the first spot, if this impacts something, one of the first spots it's going to take a lot of impact is this little nipple or this little tail right here. And it could serve as a way to distribute force maybe crush a little bit before the rest of the impact. Almost like a paleo seatbelt, you know? This is just a really nice point. What's also interesting about this and on Folsoms is the microflaking. See the microflaking on the edge? You can barely see it. It's so steep, and so they must have been microflaking these something that was very rigid and strong, like bone, a little shelf, to take those flakes and maybe even upwards. Who knows? I'm all ears when it comes to the process of making these. But similar to a lot of high plane stuff, look at the diamond cross section. And these are contemporaneous, or at least Midland and Folsom are contemporaneous. I don't know. You guys can tell me more about this one. I guess it would be a Goshen or a Midland, but it gives us an idea as to the pressure flaking and contour building that goes into the final flaking, like a channel flake, even though this is not a Folsom. Still gives us somewhat of an idea. But yeah, these little tails are interesting. If this isn't a modern point and this is a real one, it's also seen there. But you know, most of the ones that I've seen on Folsom points are not as wide as this one. Let's see if I can find another one that's finished that has that. Most of the Folsoms that I have don't show that. This one shows it just barely. Probably just a remnant of the fluting platform though. So yeah, those are the Folsoms that I have, and I'm glad you guys can tag along and take a look. This one does have that tail a little bit, and this one is good as gold because this was dug at the Blackwater Draw site in New Mexico. See a little tail there. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you guys can use this video as a resource if you're digging into learning about Folsom points and how they were made potentially, or just you're curious as to see the expert craftsmanship that went into making these 10,500 years ago, and really be able to appreciate the workmanship that ancient Native Americans and great lengths that they went to create their tools. One can only imagine the rest of their toolkit and how complex or artistic their toolkit must have been. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something.